I now give the floor to His Excellency Dhananjay Ramful, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Mauritius.
Your Excellency, the President of the General Assembly, Your Excellency, the Secretary General of the United Nations, Excellencies, distinguished delegates. 80 years ago, in the aftermath of the atrocities and horrors of the deadliest conflict in human history, the UN Charter was signed as a promise that future generations will be spared from the scourge of war. States would pursue global peace, international cooperation would be the cornerstone of our shared prosperity and progress, and human rights would be protected. The theme, Better Together, 80 years and more for peace, development, and human rights, resonates deeply with these founding ideals of our organization. There can be no peace without development, no development without peace, and neither peace nor development are sustainable without respect for human rights. The UN has stood as a beacon of hope by, amongst others, catalyzing decolonization, adopting the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, deploying over 70 peacekeeping operations, leading global efforts in times of pandemic, providing food aid to millions of people, and working in over 170 countries to help eradicate poverty, reduce inequalities, and build resilience. These are not just facts and figures, these are testimonies of what we can achieve by working together in good faith with a common purpose. These are demonstrations of how the UN is making a difference in people's lives. Unfortunately, behind these figures also hides the continued suffering of hundreds of millions of our fellow humans living in conflict zones, subject to violations of their human rights, and for whom basic human needs remain a dream. The winds of conflicts are blowing across almost all continents, all marked with blatant violations of international law. Each of them represents the failure of humanity to protect its most vulnerable. Each of them is a failure of diplomacy and the upholding of international law. In addition, protectionism and the consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic have put at stake the livelihoods of millions of people, especially in the developing world. Chair, relations between states should not be a zero-sum game. For the last 80 years, the UN has been a forum that allowed coordination and harmonization in the pursuit of common goals. For the continued relevance of the multilateral decision-making system, its legitimacy has to be restored. It should respond to the needs of all, and especially the global South. We welcome the holding of the various conferences this year, bringing together the world community to chart the path for future cooperation for our common good. For instance, we met in Nice for the Ocean Conference and in Sevilla for the Conference on Financing for Development. Later this year, we will meet in Doha for the World Social Summit and in Belém for COP30. It is, however, unfortunate that we missed the opportunity to conclude the Treaty on Plastic Pollution and protect our planet. But then what matters is how far decisions are translated into concrete actions. Chair, the world today is facing what may be accurately described as a polycrisis. Persistent conflicts, climate emergencies, environmental degradation, growing inequalities, cybercriminality, exacerbated by artificial intelligence. This begs the question, is the UN, with its current operational structure, equipped to face the challenge? We need a more efficient and effective organization. I welcome the Secretary General's UN 80 initiative, an opportunity to reimagine the future of multilateral cooperation, a UN system that responds to the new and complex challenges of today while preparing the ground for future generations. Mauritius supports the long overdue reforms of the Security Council and the revitalization of the General Assembly. Reform of the Security Council is essential for the future of the United Nations and global emancipation. As our organization turns 80, the Security Council membership should reflect the realities of today. It needs to be inclusive, representative, and accountable. Africa makes almost 30% of the UN membership. Yet, it is unrepresented in the permanent category in the Security Council. Africa has the legitimate right to have its say in matters of the world, with no less than 2 permanent seats on the Security Council. India has now emerged as a major global player and should have a permanent seat on the Council commensurate with its constructive role in global affairs. Mauritius also supports the G4 and the L69 in their efforts to promote a constructive dialogue on a more representative and equitable composition of the Security Council. Mr. President, Mauritius is fortunate to have a robust and viable democratic system. The new government elected in November last has been entrusted with the duty of making Mauritius better and bringing the people together, a mission that echoes well with the theme of this 80th session. Mauritius will continue to place people at the center of its national development, with particular focus on women, youth, and vulnerable groups. True prosperity can only be achieved when economic growth, social inclusion, and environmental sustainability advance together. Mauritius remains committed to this path. As a small island developing state, faced with the devastating impacts of climate change, external economic shocks, and geopolitical uncertainties, we value multilateralism. We value the role of the UN in shaping a world governed by the rule of law and not allowing the force of anarchy to take over. Chair, in 2015, we committed to the global ambition of ending poverty, protecting our planet, and ensuring that all people enjoy peace and prosperity through the UN Agenda 2030. We are just 5 years from our own deadline. Globally, the SDGs are far off track. Finance remains the major challenge faced by SIDS like Mauritius. We need long-term investment in sustainable development and strong multilateral cooperation. Climate change is a reality. Mauritius is not spared from its cataclysmic impact. Episodes of prolonged droughts, flash floods, and cyclones are more and more frequent. Air temperature has increased by up to 1.39 degrees Celsius. Sea level is rising by 8 millimeters per year compared to the global average of 3.3 millimeters. The socio-economic challenges posed with these irreversible changes are enormous for us to face alone. Amongst others, our tourism industry is affected, agricultural production is decreasing, and food security is real cause for concern. The historic advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice on climate change last July is clear and unambiguous. We all have a responsibility to protect the climate system. Obligations under the Paris Agreement to provide financial support, technical assistance, and technology transfer are binding. Mauritius calls upon all member states to translate these legal obligations into concrete climate action and enhance support for the most vulnerable groups. The international community should ensure that the assistance that we need for adaptation, mitigation, and building our resilience are made available. Chair, we are pleased to note the greater recourse to the ICJ in recent years. We hope that the reforms agenda will include measures to increase its effectiveness in peaceful settlement of dispute. Mauritius particularly applauds the advisory opinion of the ICJ on the Chagos Archipelago, which paved the way for negotiations that led to the signature of an agreement in May this year between the governments of Mauritius and of the United Nations. This is a vindication of international law. In this context, Mauritius is strongly committed to protecting and preserving the pristine marine environment of the Chagos Archipelago. In this regard, it is in the process of establishing a Chagos Archipelago marine protected area, whilst taking into account the aspiration of Mauritian citizens of Chagosian origin to resettle in the Chagos Archipelago. Mauritius extends its deep appreciation for the support received from UN member states right from the early 70s up to the adoption of the UNGA resolution on the 22nd of May 2019 in support of the ICJ advisory opinion. Mr. President, Mauritius reiterates its principled and long-standing stance in support of the Palestinian cause, which led to our recognition of the State of Palestine in November 1988. 78 years after the adoption of General Assembly Resolution 181, the State of Palestine continues to be denied full membership of the United Nations. Mauritius welcomes the overwhelming support for a two-state solution and endorses the New York Declaration on the peaceful settlement of the question of Palestine and the implementation of the two-state solution. We call on the international community to spare no effort to achieve this solution. Chair, the transformative potential of AI and digital technologies are undeniable, but they also represent real challenges for contemporary society. AI's capabilities should be harnessed responsibly and collectively. There is need to build a global governance architecture through multilateral negotiations that will ensure safe, secure, ethical, and inclusive use of AI. Resource and capacity constraints of developing economies have to be acknowledged and addressed. The digital divide should not be allowed to widen further. We welcome the recent establishment of the UN Independent International Scientific Panel on AI and the Global Dialogue on AI Governance. Monsieur le Président,
President, I would like to reiterate my country's commitment to fully supporting regional cooperation as well as the pooling of the efforts of Indian Ocean Rim countries in the interests of all of us. This is our regional version of Better Together. Mauritius is honored to host on its territory the headquarters of two Indian Ocean country organizations, specifically the Indian Ocean Commission and the Indian Ocean Rim Association. In 2012, we concluded an agreement with the Seychelles, the aim being to co-manage a vast maritime area. We are now working on its implementation. I would like to recall that following the recognition of our sovereignty over the Chagos Archipelago by the United Kingdom, Mauritius now expects the same outcome as regards our sovereignty over the island of Tromelin.
Chair, let me reiterate our strong conviction that we are indeed better together. And to continue to be better together, we must adapt, reform, and reinvigorate the UN. In this regard, the Pact for the Future charts a new course for international cooperation. Let us rise to the challenge. Let us be bold in our actions, compassionate in our leadership, and united in our resolve. No one should be left behind. Thank you.
Muchas gracias al ministro de Relaciones.
I thank the Minister for Foreign Affairs of Mauritius. I now give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Robert